Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Los Altos Community Coalition. We've got yet another terrific program for you this morning. And just a quick reminder of the agenda and our meeting norms. Los Altos Community Coalition's mission is as follows. Through education and conversation about future trends, policy proposals, and best practices, the Los Altos Community Coalition promotes good city planning, good government, and civil discourse in our community. Please support the coalition by going to our YouTube channel link, which will be in the chat, I believe, and clicking on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. This will enable us to have some additional opportunities to personalize and customize the channel for our use. Please stay muted during the program and when you're not speaking. And after the program, we'll open it up for questions. Please limit yourself to one question until everybody else has gotten a chance to ask their question. And please do not give commentary or a speech before asking your question. Standard operating procedure, right? We're going to start with self-intros and then move on to the program. For self-intros, please take no more than 10 seconds to introduce yourself. Kim, take it away.
Thank you, Marie. I'll start by modeling self-introduction. I'm Kim Cranston, co-founder of the coalition, member of the steering committee. Joe.
Good morning, Joe Beninato, Los Altos Community Coalition Steering Committee, and also a planning commissioner, but not here in that capacity.
Thank you, Joe. David.
David Rock, steering committee member of LACC since its inception, and also always representing Los Altos Hills Little League.
Mike Abrams. You're muted.
I am. Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Mike Abrams, community volunteer.
Thank you. Adele.
Adele Hennig, Assistance Legal Los Altos.
Gary Hedden.
Gary Hayden, active with Greentown, the History Museum, and your Los Altos of the Year. And with your indulgence at the end, I want to tell you about the Strongest Town in America contest, because I entered Los Altos and we are in it.
Whoa.
Okay. Robin.
Good morning, Robin Abrams, community volunteer.
Ginny.
Ginny Lear, Los Altos Women's Caucus.
Thank you. Mary. You're muted, Mary.
There we go. Sorry about that. Good morning. Mary Prochnow, property owner, realtor, former council person. That's it. Good morning.
Thank you, Mary.
Is that all, Mary? Gee.
No. It's too long a list.
Scott.
All right, I had to look there to see if there was O'Brien was here. But hi, Scott Hunter, Los Altos Village Association. I'm also on the board of the Los Altos Stage Company. I'm in the New Theater Working Group and a member of the Rotary.
Great. Sue.
Hi, Sue Russell, League of Women Voters and Los Altos Affordable Housing Alliance.
Great. Thank you. Liz.
Liz Nyberg, fellow Rotarian with Pete. Los Altos property owners downtown, and History Museum volunteer.
Great, thank you. Adine.
Good morning, Adine Miller, CEO, Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation, calling in from Arizona, notwithstanding the background.
Thank you. Janine.
Good morning, Janine Valadez, Parks and Rec Commissioner, but not here in that capacity. Also working with Affordable Housing Alliance, Los Altos and the Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you. John Cowan.
Hi, John Cowan, Senior Director of Government Relations and Community Partnerships at El Camino Health, and also board member of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation.
Thank you. Larry's iPad Air. I think you're muted.
Larry Barron, still a resident.
Great. Thank you. Good to see you, Larry. Larry Lang.
Hi, Larry Lang, president of the Los Altos History Museum and chair of the Historic Commission, but not here in that capacity.
Great. Emily Thurber.
Calling in from Seattle. Just had to see all my old friends.
Hey, Emily, hi.
Great to see you.
Bridge buddy.
I wish I were there.
Laura.
Hi, Laura Texler, co-chair of the Community Foundation and an environmental commissioner, but not here in that capacity.
Great, thank you. Laurel Iverson. You there, Laurel? Maybe not. Come back in a minute.
Sorry, I didn't hit the mute button. Sorry. It's the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation and community volunteer and tech impaired person.
Okay, and Los Altos Chamber. Los Altos Chamber, you're muted. Well, can't see if anybody's there. We'll move on. Back to you, Marie.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we got the Los Altos Chamber there.
Yeah, sorry, I had unmuted on my phone, but not on the system. So good morning, Kim Mosley, President of Los Altos Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome. Back to you, Marie.
Okay, it really is me this time, huh, Kim?
Yeah.
Marie Young, a member of the steering committee for the Los Altos Community Coalition. And our program today is entitled an introduction to our new city council member, Pete Dailey. Let me start by introducing Pete to you all, as if perhaps you already know. Pete has lived for more than 30 years in Silicon Valley. He moved to Mountain View in 1993 after attending Cal Berkeley, although we won't hold that against him, and later got an MBA from Pepperdine in the President and Key Executive Program. He expects to graduate from Stanford this coming June with a Master of Liberal Arts. Professionally, he started a cable TV company in Seoul, South Korea, and later sold it to communications conglomerate Daycom. Am I pronouncing that right, Pete?
Yes.
Daycom, okay. He's been a Los Altos resident since 2010, and his two children have attended public schools in Los Altos, including Oak, Block, and Mountain View High School. Pete has served the community as a coach and board member of Los Altos Mountain View Pony Baseball and Mountain View Los Altos Girls Softball, so we know what sports your kids are into, and through a 4-year term on the Parks and Rec Commission. He is currently a member of Los Altos Rotary and chair of the board of the directors for the Lassen Park Foundation. Pete was elected to the Los Altos City Council in November 2022. Please join me in congratulating Pete on his recent election and welcoming him this morning. Pete, would you like to make a brief presentation, or should we head right into questions?
Thanks, Marie. I'll talk for a couple of minutes. I haven't prepared any slides. That's generally not how I roll. I like to keep things more informal and have more of an interactive discussion when I engage with the community. So let me start first by saying thank you all for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces. I'm really happy to see everybody. I think I know about 80 or 90% of the folks that I see here. I particularly am happy to see Larry Barron this morning because he gave us a bit of a scare. And I'm really happy to see Emmy Thurber, coming to us from Seattle. Thanks, Emmy. I thought I'd take a moment to talk a little bit about one of the more urgent issues that we're dealing with in our community right now, and that would be automated license plate readers. So I'll just share where I am on this issue right now. Of course, things could change, and I'm always open to getting more information. And this is a subject that I'm, probably talking to people about just about every day, both residents who are in favor of automated license plate readers, residents who are opposed to them for various reasons, and residents who may be on the fence. And so I became familiar with automated license plate readers during the campaign. I thought I knew what the most important issues were in Los Altos, but being somebody who had gone to every single city council meeting and all of my own commission meetings, as well as several other commissions over time, my views were certainly informed by being engaged in that way. And then when I started knocking on doors, I found out something that shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but there's a lot of residents who simply don't have time for that level of engagement and aren't aware necessarily of the issues that I brought to the top of my sort of campaign platform, which would have been housing and the environment and city finances. Instead, a lot of folks who are just struggling to, get their kids to school in the morning amidst all the crazy traffic that we have to deal with, and then pick them up in the afternoon and get them to piano practice or softball practice or baseball practice, and again, deal with traffic and all kinds of things, or maybe they send their kids to school on bikes. They were concerned about public safety. And then a lot of residents are also concerned about some of the property crime that we've had in Los Altos. And so I engaged with our new police chief and worked through different approaches to try to address some of the property crime. And automated license plate readers really jumped out to me as something that would be reasonable financially to undertake, and also resonated with me because I favor anything that we can do in policing to make it more objective. And I felt like the application of technology would make policing more objective. Now, automated license plate readers are basically cameras with machine vision that will capture the license plate number of vehicles that pass in front of, that pass through the range of the camera. And if those vehicles are associated with crime, either the vehicle itself is stolen or the plates are stolen, or the vehicle is known to have been involved in a crime, it's going to trigger an alert to a dispatcher. And then we have an opportunity to roll a squad car and check out the situation. I've always felt that kind of evidence-based policing would be more equitable than a police officer pulling over, making contact with a resident or somebody who's visiting our town based on intuitions and feelings. That car looks out of place or something like that. That kind of subjective policing. Thankfully, I think police have pretty good, sort of spidey sense a lot of times. So I would never take that tool away, never advocate taking that tool away from them. But by adding in something that I believe is more objective, I thought it would be a step in the right direction in terms of equity, and a step in the right direction for not just preventing crime, but also bringing some of these criminals to justice. The evidence on the effectiveness of ALPRs is spotty. There isn't evidence that they don't work. There's some evidence that the systems are not perfect, but you have several layers of human intervention. First, the dispatcher who views the alert and then decides whether or not to forward it to an officer to check it out, and then the officer on the scene. There's certainly privacy concerns, and that's really where my focus is right now. I think this is a direction in which I think we should go in this direction, but I also think that Los Altos should have best of breed policy wrapped around the deployment. And so I've taken a look at the state auditor's report. The California state auditor did a report on automated license plate readers in 2020 and looked at more than 20 jurisdictions. In particular, paid attention to just a couple and went into detail. But the main finding of the auditor's report is that the majority of jurisdictions in California do not have sufficient controls to ensure privacy and equity in the way the technology is deployed. The state auditor's report definitively did not say that the systems don't work. It didn't find any fault with their efficacy, but it did point out some best practices with regard to data retention and so forth that I think are going to be real important in Los Altos. I haven't decided for sure which way I'm going to go. At the last council meeting, I voted to move forward with the pilot, but there were still a few council members who weren't yet convinced. And so we're going to have more information come back to council. And, you know, it is possible that during that process, I may change my mind. But I'm already, you know, sort of on the record as supporting the automated license plate readers. So with that said, I just wanted to share that because it's really at the top. I can't tell you, I'm getting, you know, at least half a dozen interactions with residents every day on this particular subject right now. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the moderator and we can get right into questions and interaction.
Okay, thank you for that, Pete. We really appreciate it. And thanks again for being with us this morning. I have a few questions before we open it up to the attendees for you, okay? So Pete, what inspired you to run for election to the city council and at this particular time?
Well, I had been involved in public service for a while. I retired from tech almost 10 years ago. It'd be 10 years it'll be 10 years next January. And the main reason I did that was to spend more time with my kids, but it also opened up a lot of time to engage with the community. So I, you know, volunteered and was appointed to the Parks and Recreation Commission, which gave me an opportunity to get involved in city government and also to get involved with the residents in the community. And that was a fabulous experience. Interestingly enough, 4 of our current 5 city council members also served on that commission, including Jonathan Weinberg, who served with me on that commission. And I helped him with his campaign. I was his treasurer. And so those were sort of the building blocks for coming to the decision to run for council. And as I looked at the current what was then the current council, I definitely felt like I could contribute something and that I, you know, wanted to move the council in the direction of my own values, which, you know, which are oriented around housing and the environment and, you know, equity and justice. The other thing that I decided was when I looked at it, I said, you know, I'm going to run against an incumbent or 2 incumbents actually. And that can be daunting. And the next cycle is going to have an open seat because one of my colleagues on council is going to term out. So I was thinking, okay, you know, should I wait until 2024? But I actually think that, you know, the possibility in 2024 is that there's half a dozen candidates and it becomes very difficult to differentiate from one candidate from another. So I just felt like this was a good opportunity. And thankfully I had encouragement and support from, you know, mentors who I trust and value. And with my family, we decided to do it.
Okay, thank you. And maybe there'll be a follow-up question to that from somebody in the audience. I don't know. So you've been on the council now for about 3 months. What, if anything, has surprised you so far, both positive or negative?
Well, one of the positive surprises has been just how professional our city staff is. And I had some exposure to that already, but once you're on council, you end up getting in the loop on a lot more things that are going on. So I'm tremendously heartened and pleased, and maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm just really gratified at how professional the staff is. And a lot of that is attributable to our city manager, but a lot of it is, you know, the people that have been there even longer than Gabe has. So very pleased to work with city staff. I think I was also surprised at how animated residents can get when issues strike close to home for them. I had some experience with that through the Parks and Recreation Commission and through attending, you know, city council meetings. But now that I've had an opportunity to sort of be in the middle of a lot of stuff, like I said, I'm getting at least a half a dozen interactions a day on automated license plate readers. And I'm sure that as time goes on, everything that bubbles to the top is going to be areas where Los Altans are just passionate about seeing what they think is the right thing done. And that's also kind of heartening to be in a community that cares so much about what's going on around them.
I'm sure I'm sure that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's, yeah. Okay, can you say more and be specific, maybe giving some examples about what your campaign slogan, "Teamwork makes the dream work," means to you?
Sure. What I'd like to do is talk about one specific example rather than looking back and talking about, you know, some situation in the past. I'd like to look forward. I have been advocating for building a parking structure in downtown with a park on top. And this is the kind of project that, first of all, to get any project of any scope done and is going to require teamwork. It's going to require getting various stakeholders together, and it's going to involve getting people to compromise. What I like about the downtown parking structure with a park concept is, number one, we have right now about $8.5 million in our park and lieu fund. Now, those particular dollars are not fungible. Normally, money is somewhat fungible in a budget, and if you save it in one place, you can spend it in another place. But the park and lieu fees are dedicated specifically to either acquiring new parks or improving those, you know, amenities that we already have. So the thing about a parking garage is it's going to actually free us up to pursue a variety of development initiatives for downtown. In the past, I've been on the new theater working group. I've been involved in a number of things, including, you know, the push for more housing. And one of the common refrains from opponents for various projects is, well, what's going to happen to parking? And, you know, that's a real concern for sure. I do think that our behavior, our social behavior changes over time, and we're seeing more things like e-bikes and whatnot. I personally have an e-bike that I use to get downtown when the weather is decent. And so our parking requirements may not be the same 10 years from now that they are now, but we certainly need parking, there's no doubt. And the notion that we would dedicate one of our parking plazas to a theater and another one or two to housing leaves us with a big deficit of parking unless we address that. And so building a parking structure with a park on top allows a couple of things. Number one, we need the green space where we have fewer acres of parkland per acre of residential property than any of our surrounding peers. And two, as I said, we need the parking. But this means that we can team up and we can bring together people who are hyper dedicated to housing, because this is an initiative that will also bear fruit in our efforts to use one of the other parking plazas for housing. We can bring together a coalition involving folks who are very animated about the theater. We can bring together folks whose interests are intrinsically, you know, parking. And so I think we're going to have a lot of different interests that can be aligned. And if we all work together as a team, not only to get the things done that we want to get done, but also to surface concerns that various groups will have, then we can address those in the process. And in the end, have a much better outcome for the community by teaming up on this.
I've heard that there are some parking structures that are built now intentionally so that they can be used for other things in the future. Say self-driving cars become a real thing and we don't need as much parking. And, you know, so in a few years, we want to use it for something else. What do you know about that?
Well, I've had, some interesting conversations about that. I haven't done any homework on it to understand what the impact is on particular projects. I don't know how dramatically that changes the either the capital expense or the operating expense. And those would certainly be my top two questions, to do some homework on. But anytime you make an investment, a capital investment of that magnitude, I think it's rather obvious that you have to spend some time future proofing the investment, because we would expect the lifespan of that investment to be, measured in decades.
Okay. So I have two more questions for Pete. So the rest of you get ready and for when you want to ask your question. And just a reminder, no speeches before the question, please, and one question per person till everyone gets a chance to ask their question. So my next question for you is that we know from your campaign literature that your three main areas of focus are housing, the environment, and city finances. What specifically do you hope to accomplish during your term in these areas, and what will be your specific contribution in each area?
Well, for starters, on the housing topic, I think we need to do some zoning changes. In particular, I think the low-hanging fruit are the office and administrative districts. Obviously, the OA district between Hillview and Foothill on the the west side of San Antonio. I always get east, west, north, south kind of mixed up with San Antonio. I think that's a great place for higher density housing. It also factors into my emphasis on the environment, because it gives us an opportunity to build housing where people can walk to our lovely downtown triangle, and that reduces our carbon footprint per resident for sure. There's some other OA districts. I think that the district around Distal Drive is OA and is ripe for redevelopment. The other OA district that gets talked about a lot is the area over by Mackenzie Park, where there are, dental offices and things of that nature. I'm not sure how much that neighborhood needs to change. Some of those buildings are actually quite new. The one on the corner with Fremont, beautiful building with cedar siding on it and stuff. I don't know what that office is dedicated to, but that's a relatively new building. One of the things that I contribute for is a vote. And I know that sounds trite, but it's not trivial. We have in the past had, rather drawn out discussions trying to get to a majority to get some of these initiatives to move forward. And that at the very least is something that I can contribute to. But I think I can also contribute by engaging the stakeholders. I've been spending a lot of time with some of the residents on Distal Drive on the corner of Distal and El Camino. They have the 5150 development that is now a Prometheus development going in next door to them, hopefully. And then there has been discussion of, and in fact, a council resolution making 745 Distal sort of the target for development into a park. That's a little bit problematic because neither the city nor the developer controls that parcel. But I've gone over there several times to walk the property with neighbors. I've started talking to the owner of 745 Distal, although I have explicitly said I actually don't want to talk about the sale of that property because it's already the subject of an effort by Prometheus to potentially acquire that, and so I didn't want to meddle in any way. But I think I can contribute as an interlocutor, working with the residents, and maybe as an ideas person as well.
Cool. What about the other priorities that emerged at the city council session on on February 21st. Did that change your thinking in any way or influence you to think about things in a deeper way or?
No, it really didn't. I mean, the council priorities, I think, are you know, I'm in basic agreement with the council priorities. We've got 4 plans that have been characterized in some cases as aspirational, and those include the climate action plan, the housing element, the downtown vision, and the complete streets master plan, all of which I generally support. It doesn't mean that every element of, you know, it doesn't mean that everything that's presented in the downtown vision is something that I wholeheartedly support, but certainly the vast majority of those things I do. And the same is mostly true for the complete streets report. Although when you're talking about a document that's actually some 300 pages, it's about 200 pages of actual of plan and another 100 pages or so of ideas that didn't make it into the plan that were rejected for one reason or another. It would be foolish to say that I support that 100%, because when it comes down to some of the very specific traffic calming or pedestrian protection or circulation enhancement measures for given neighborhoods, those are going to have to come back to council individually and be discussed, and we're going to have to engage with the residents in those neighborhoods, and there may be things that come to light that I'm not privy to or aware of yet that would change my opinion on those. But in general, I'm very pleased with the work of the Complete Streets Master Plan. The housing element, I'm 110% for, and then the climate action adaptation plan is also something that I'm extremely supportive of.
Okay. And you talked about housing and the environment and the nexus between the two. You didn't really touch on city finances. What about that?
Well, I'm happy to say that we've made some progress in one of the areas that I think that was most detrimental to our city finances, which is our accumulated legal liabilities and the magnitude of our potential legal risk going forward. And so I think we've made, and some of that came from suits by AT&T and Verizon. And I can't talk about what's going on with any of these lawsuits because it's pending litigation, and we've discussed things in closed session that can't be shared with the public. But I will say that our legal liabilities have been reduced, and I'm very happy about that. I also think that our new finance director and the city manager have done a pretty good job getting our budgeting process to a place where it's not only appropriate and effective, but also conservative enough that I'm cautiously optimistic we're not going to find ourselves in the kind of budget crunch that we seem to be in a year or two ago. So finances are looking good. The housing element itself is a positive, it's an accretive financial plan, because if you just do some back of the envelope math and you look at adding 1,958 housing units, granted some 600 of them or so are going to be below market, and then you look at what we get in development fees, particularly park and lieu fees for multifamily homes and for single family residences. And then you sort of back out some of that because the city will contribute some of that fee income potentially to, like an all affordable development, as in the case with the Distal Drive development. We're probably looking at, $80-90 million in our park and lieu fund over the course of 8 years for the housing element. So I tend to think that if you are intentional about the way you create incentives and guardrails for development, that we can generate quite a bit of revenue that can be put to use for really some fabulous amenities for our community. So over the course of the next several years, I want to see us build a parking structure with a park on it. I want to see us build a theater downtown, and I want to see us build a new library. And if we did those three things, along with working to sort of create incentives and rationalize some of the incentives for redevelopment in some of our commercial districts like downtown, I think, the vision for downtown, not to, be tried about using that word when we have the downtown vision plan, but I think the vision for downtown is really encouraging and exciting.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so last question, folks, get ready. Your campaign was unique to you, of course. Intentionally, we assume you chose not to follow the path and advice of some of your predecessors. Who are your mentors, and to whom do you listen and look to for advice?
Well, some of my mentors are here today, for sure. I don't know if I really want to name names, but I do see several faces, of mentors, of people who have given me really good advice. I've definitely worked with several of the previous mayors. There's no doubt that getting advice from somebody who's been there and done that is, an exceptional opportunity, and one that I'm pretty grateful for.
Okay. I understand your reluctance to name names, so we'll let it go with that. If anybody wants to press you on it, that's up to them, and you can do what you want to do. Do you have any closing thoughts or remarks that you'd like to make before we open it up to the attendees?
No, I'm ready. Let's bring it on.
Okay. So thanks for a great conversation, and I'll open it up now to attendees for questions. Please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. And do remember, it's one question per person and no speeches, please. Do we have any questions for Pete? Okay, Pat Hedden.
I couldn't change. I couldn't
really
rename
Gary.
myself. I don't know why the rename function isn't working this morning, but I'm Gary. My one
Gary.
question is a follow-up on your automated license plate readers. I'm
Sure.
pretty interested in that as well. My biggest concern, and so the question is, are they effective? I can certainly understand that they'll spot a stolen car, but how often does that happen? It seems like
It happens pretty often. If you look at the Los Altos Hills report on their 1-year pilot, there were 7 cases closed because of ALPRs, and then some misunderstanding because there was a statement that no residential burglaries were solved or because of it, but various other types of property crime, including stolen vehicles, were amongst those 7 incidents of closed cases. And I was talking to one of the council members and past mayors of the Los Altos Hills last week at the event to honor you, Gary. And he noted that in one of those 7 instances, there was a hit for a stolen vehicle. Sheriff's department rolled a car, pulled over the vehicle, arrested the occupants, and found burglary tools in the vehicle. So that was not only an instance of a closed, a crime that was where the perpetrators were arrested, but also probably an instance of preventing future crime because they were casing the neighborhood. So when I set about in my homework process to find evidence of efficacy, it's not easy because crime is a very complicated social dynamic, and it's propelled or restrained by lots of different factors. Some of them economic, some of them social, some of them policy based, and so forth. And so you can't really create. It's very difficult to create a scientific experiment where you control solely for the factor of ALPRs. So what we're left with is a lot of anecdotal evidence. And I frequently say that, the plural of anecdote is not data, but in this case, it sort of is. However, you have kind of a denominator and numerator problem in that, you can get the number of cases that have been impacted by the use of ALPRs, but you don't know what the total number of potential cases are. There have been instances where, for example, ALPRs directly led to the recovery of a child who, Amber Alert. There are several instances of Amber Alert, good results. And so what I will say about that is, I don't think you can put a price on the value of recovering an abducted child. So those successes are rather priceless.
Thank you.
Mary Prochnow, over to you.
There you go.
Yep, I got it. Good morning, Pete. So on the subject that we're discussing currently, I understand Marin County had a problem with their license plate readers, in that at one point there was discussion of turning over the information to ICE and another government authority. So while it comes up that we're concerned about privacy, when that's said, I think most people think that somebody's going to worry about who's stopping by somebody's house in the afternoon or some such issue of privacy, rather than these kinds of issues. When I've spoken to other people about this, they've assured me that our police chief says she would never do that, the council would never do that, but there are no nevers in city government.
Yeah.
If you have a change in a police captain, or you have a change in the council, as we've seen nationally, everything is turned upside down. So I'm curious what your feeling is about that risk versus property crime.
Right.
I'm opposed to them, obviously, but anyway, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
So this is a great question, and this is precisely why one of my areas of emphasis has been on wrapping the best policy around this that we can. Now, I like our new chief. I personally trust her. I don't think that is a basis for public policy in any way. Because as you said, Mary, we could have a different police chief, or, things could change the way our current police chief sees the world, or we could have a different council. So we got to put this in writing. The current policy that we have for our one mobile ALPR, I spoke to, one of the residents who helped formulate that policy back in 2012 and 2013 when it was implemented. We need to follow the advice of the state auditor's report. Another source of information that I found particularly useful and informative for me was the ACLU. Now, it's interesting that on the ACLU website, they do not come out and oppose ALPRs at all. That's not what they express in the public information that they provide, and they've got a rather substantial dedicated portion of their website. What the ACLU does is cautions about abuses. I've also looked at some of the court cases. There's one in Maryland that's most recent that is really probably bears the most on this subject. And so one of the privacy concerns is any government entity being able to go back and at some future date and look at a citizen's whereabouts over time. And so at any one moment in time, I know, in fact, that nobody has the right to expect privacy in their vehicle on the public right of way. You have a driver's license and your vehicle is licensed. And by getting those licenses, you agree to forego privacy to a certain extent. You don't have an expectation that you can be on the public right of way and not have your presence on that right of way known to whoever jurisdictionally has control of that right of way. But over time, you may have an expectation of privacy, and so I think that the retention of the data and limiting that to 30 days, which would be sort of best in class practice right now, is a table stake. It's a minimum requirement, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Laura, you're next, but I have a follow-up to Mary's question. Is there any way to write a policy where some, I mean, I don't want people reporting to ICE, for example, but our borders with surrounding communities are kind of porous. So, and somebody might drive from Mountain View, say, or Los Altos Hills and through into Los Altos. Is there any way to write a policy that takes into account that we're against some reporting and not against some other? Because it might make sense to let Mountain View know that bad guy number one is coming your way, for example.
It does make sense, in particular with Mountain View, because we share a dispatch system with them. And when you're traveling, like when one of our officers is patrolling, they will frequently patrol into Mountain View. If you're looking at that area around, around Chef Chu's, that corner of San Antonio and El Camino, one of the ride-alongs that I did, we crossed El Camino, went into Mountain View, made a loop, and come back, right? And the same thing happens for Mountain View patrols. They will frequently, come across the border, and we help each other. We use the same dispatch system. When you're in a Los Altos squad car, you can see on the map in the computer where all of the Mountain View squad cars are as well. So, that kind of teamwork across neighboring jurisdictions is also a type of teamwork that I very much favor. But we're going to have to, look at all of the, fortunately, we're coming to this kind of late. And what I mean by that is that we have examples of good and bad practices that we can evaluate and make sure that we're doing at least as well as all of our peers. If not, I would like to see us be a leader, in establishing appropriate policies around this. But almost every other city in our area has implemented this technology or is, about to.
Okay, so the question was really about, can we write a policy that takes into account the differences?
So short answer is yes, we can write good policy. I'm pretty confident that we will be able to, because we care enough about it. And as I look around at my colleagues on council, I note that two of them are attorneys and are bring some very good professional experience to bear on this.
Okay. Laura, over to you. Laura Texler.
So I'm going to switch the subject, and thank you for supporting the cap. So as a primary thing that you're working towards, and first up, having the discussion about gas-powered leaf blower ban next Tuesday. We've been waiting for better enforcement for that. But more generally, I wanted to ask about the discussion of how you see the direction of the how environmental commissions are going to be handled, because I know that's a topic you've discussed, and how commissions and the council and staff are going to work productively together and still have commissions provide value.
So great question. Thorny subject to a certain extent. There's a lot of changes going on with the expiration of the governor's emergency order on March 1st. Now all of our commissions are once again required to meet in person. This has resulted in a couple of commissioners resigning because they have, health reasons or other reasons why they don't want to return to in-person meetings. And we already find ourselves in a situation where we have lots of open seats on the commissions and some trouble recruiting. So I'm very encouraged that our LEAD program has been reinvigorated. Thank you to the Community Foundation for the support of that program. And I think that's a great source of commissioners. The other thing that is going on is, because of some of these plans that we've adopted, in particular the housing element, we've eliminated one of our commissions. We've eliminated the Design Review Commission. So there's definitely, I think, both an opportunity and a requirement to look at who is currently serving on the commissions and make sure that we have sufficient commissioners to conduct the business of the commissions. And then we also need to, frankly, we need to look at how the commissions are operating and what they're undertaking, because the commissions serve at the pleasure of council and need to be focused on what council would like them to work on, which coming from a commission, I would rankle at that initially when I first volunteered. I'd say, well, what are you talking about? Actually, I'm a resident and you work for me, Mr. Counselor. But if there isn't council support, that means, frankly, there's no budget for particular initiatives. And so I think the commission's work needs to align with the CIP, which is, what our guiding document is for where we're going to spend our money in terms of capital projects and so forth. So we do need to definitely revisit that. And there have been some instances where commissions or commissioners have branched out beyond what their remit may be, and we need to have a meeting of the minds and get everybody realigned. That may mean moving council in a direction more toward where a particular commission is, or it might mean moving that commission back toward where council is. But engaging with the commissions and reevaluating our commission structure and processes is timely right now.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Does anybody have a last question for Pete? If not, then we'll move on.
It looks like Scott's raising his hand.
Oh, Scott's raising it. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw something in at the end. Pete, can you tell us a little bit about the foundation, your Lassen Foundation, and how you got involved with that?
Sure. So my family has had a home near Lassen for I don't know, several generations. Now we have a couple. My mom has the family cabin, and then I bought a place a couple of years ago. I learned to ski up there when there was a ski area. My mother used to was a school teacher, and so during the summer she would go up there and wait tables when she had summers off as a teacher and so forth. So sort of a lifelong association with Lassen. And I joined the board of the Lassen Park Foundation 6.5 or almost 7 years ago. And if any of you have ever read the book Good to Great, the Park Foundation could have easily been an example in that book, because it was still run by the founder 37 years after he had created the organization, and he wanted to retire and caught me in a moment of weakness and convinced me to take over for him. So I've been the chair now, I guess, for the last couple of years. And we provide capital for big projects in the park. We help fund the new visitor center on the south side of the park, and now we're looking at maybe renovating the historic Loomis residence on the north side of the park. But what really captures my energy is our mission to support getting kids into the park. So we built a youth camp, very, very nice facility. It's got a dozen tent cabins, a dining hall, a fire pit, latrines, and we pay to staff it with 2 interpretive rangers. And we bring youth groups into the park for free, whereas normally you have to pay for camping in national parks. And we provide grants, $1,000 to each group to cover the cost of gasoline, and we used to say to cover gas and food. Now it covers gas and Pop-Tarts. That's about it. But that's what really gets me going is thinking about getting young people into the park. I get letters from them after they've visited the park, and we change these kids' lives. They'll say things like, "Oh my God, I've never seen so many stars at night. I didn't know there were that many." Or, "I've never tasted water that clean and clear, or breathed air that clean and clear." And so these young people are the next generation of stewards to care for this natural treasure that we have.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for asking that. And thank you, Pete, for a terrific answer. Gary, you wanted a couple of minutes at the end, which I will, we have time. We have like about 4 minutes left, but before you go, I'd like to make a couple of announcements. Our next meeting will be on Friday, March 24th, again from 8:30 to 9:30 via Zoom. It's going to be about the downtown theater feasibility study, and we're not sure exactly who will be presenting at this time, but we'll have that information for you before the session, which should be terrific. Also, if you'd like to be added to the mailing list for the coalition, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. This email is posted in the chat for your convenience. And as always, a big thank you to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing the coalition with financial and in-kind support. We wish Larry Barron well. He, as you know, has been posting our videos to YouTube. He's going to be taking a break, but fortunately for us, Joe Beninado has figured out how to do it. So he'll be doing that. And so that's the wrap up. Thank you again, Pete, for a great discussion. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks. Take it away, Gary. You have now like a minute and a half.
I'll talk fast. Thanks, Marie. The Strongest Town in America contest has been around for 8 years, or this is the 8th year. And their focus is saving small towns, the charm of small towns, the vitality of the downtown core. And what does it take? And so they ask people from across America to nominate their town if they're doing the right things. And I think Los Altos is doing so many of the right things with our downtown vision, our new community center, the new history museum upgrade. We're putting a lot of green paint on the streets to make it a more bikeable. And then, the emphasis, quite frankly, is in addition, is putting less emphasis on cars and making downtowns bikeable, walkable, livable, and housing comes into that too. So we are doing all of the things, and it just seemed like this was the year of any year for us to join this contest. And I don't know how many people do apply, but we made the cut. There's 16 towns that are going to be. It's like a March Madness. We're paired up. We're going to be paired up against one other town. I don't even know who it is yet. And then there'll be a round of votes, and people will be voting. So I'm going to look for you to vote and to look at this. And then if we make the next cut, you have the next round of 8, and then a round of 4, and so on. And the whole thing, yeah, it's an opportunity to see what other towns are doing, to be proud about what we're doing. And I just think it's a really exciting contest. Last year, the winner was Jasper, Indiana. And what they did, they had a grassroots effort to save the downtown theater. And they did it. And so this is a core part of the downtown for them. And so they're just a little community, half the size of us, but they were successful in doing that. And the contrast that was brought to the attention at that time was Anchorage, Alaska, where they did just the opposite. They tore out their theater. They put a road right through the middle of downtown. They did everything wrong. And so we want to emphasize what's right. So we'll know who there's going to be a press release sent out by the organization today, and we'll know who our first round opponent is. And then we'll be voting March 20th for 4 days. And so I'll send you information. Maybe Kim can distribute that, and we'll see if we can get the votes to make it to the next round.
And Gary, have you talked to Bruce Barton about this?
I'm going to send him a note.
Sure. Sound prior.
You bet.
Sounds like a lot of fun, as well as an important opportunity for us as a town to put ourselves on the national map.
Well, Santa Clara entered it last year, and they didn't do that well for whatever reason. But it's going to come down to who your matchup is in the first round, or all the rounds, really. Yeah. I'm sure all cities have a good story to tell, but we have one too.
Great. Thank you, Gary. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.